Reading FC proved that there is no such thing as rusty legs at the Medeski Stadium this season with a fantastic 3-0 win over Coventry on Tuesday night after an impromptu weekend off due to the Brentford COVID-19 outbreak that has meant that we will be facing the Bees in a massively anticipated promotion clash a little later on. But for now, it was Coventry on the Tuesday night, a 3-0 win. Welcome to the Tilehurst End. I'm your host, Marc Mayo, and joining me in an unusual, immediate post-game podcast. This is the excitement, the raw emotion that must be coursing through us right now. Olly, Alan, how's it going, mate?
I am very well, thank you. Yeah, it's always great to record straight after a game, especially when you've won 3-0. So still very much on that emotional high right now.
Absolutely, the kind of the kind of deliberate decision that we make usually to record maybe on the Monday afternoon after a game, but when the dust has settled, all of the news and everything has come out, we can have a calm, reasoned look at a game. But not tonight. This is the febrile atmosphere that we would like to be in at the Medeski Stadium right now. And just before we go into the weekend, a big thank you, as always, to the sponsors of this podcast, ZCZ Films, who continue to do us good, and hopefully obviously the entertainment industry struggling at the moment. We're very happy to give them a name check and to shout that from the hilltops, and also for our Patreon subscribers who continue again to put their hand in their pocket and just help us along those virtual tip jar coin that we put into the show, and hopefully shows off in relatively decent production values. But nothing is as good as a win for Reading FC, so let's go on into the recap now and talk about that.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
Okay, so let's just kind of clear up basically what happened. The reason we're recording this on Tuesday night as opposed to a Sunday night or whatever is because the Brentford game was postponed on the Saturday. So Reading are now kind of, we're not actually in the cluster of teams that have a game in hand because we played tonight, and there were teams that have had much more sort of postponements and everything going on. But Reading had a few days break then into the Tuesday night game. And Olly, to the first thing that I noticed, we played, I think this was for the first time since the second week of the season, we've played Elise, Swift and Ejaria in the 11 from the off. And really, you can probably argue that maybe Yaku Mate is in that as a first choice sort of starting lineup. But really, for me, this was the first choice midfield and attack that I've been wanting to see for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted during the game that, when all of those four players are fit, then Paunovic has a very big choice to make because there's pretty much quality everywhere you look, and adds Lucas João into the mix as the lone striker, and it's for me, it is one of the best front fours, if not the best front four in the Championship. And as you say, there's not been too many sort of scenarios where all four players have been fit so far this season. Whether there will be, come into the campaign, I don't know. But yeah, it was, John Swift, we know the quality he's got. Obviously, he's missed a lot of this season through injury, but he was fantastic tonight, with a superb sort of ball over the top for Lucas João's goal, and then just that incredible free kick that I think very few other players in the division could score. It's a fantastic strike. But yeah, I think Paunovic has a very big decision to make when Yaku Mate comes back fit, because it's not an easy decision to make. Yeah. With those four players, trying to put them into those three attacking midfield slots. For me, probably at the moment, Ovier Ejaria probably drops out when all three are fit, with Elise on the left, Swift in the middle, and Yaku Mate on the right. But as I say, it's a good problem for him to have, I think.
No, absolutely. And this is the thing, I suppose we can, you can discuss all of the players individually, but I suppose from tonight you kind of saw all of those three midfielders at their best at points, because Elise was very tricky on the ball, played a few nice passes for the second goal, certainly did. Won quite a lot of free kicks, actually, with just neat little touches here and there, which was really useful for Reading in terms of bringing the game out from the back. John Swift, as you say, with that great free kick and the assist for the first goal. Ovier Ejaria hitting the post in the first half with a really nice piece of play from him. So, yeah, it's really nice to see those guys all back together, and certainly Reading benefited from that on a Tuesday night. However, we started the game Reading did try quite hard to concede in the first 15 minutes. An early gift from Tom Holmes, really dreadful pass across the D, which just went to no one and was saved before McIntyre managed to clear away the rebound. They had another great chance with a header on 13 minutes. And when Reading actually took the lead, this, I think, was the first attack.
Yeah, we didn't start well at all, I have to say, and it certainly looked as if, it was true that a lot of those players hadn't played obviously since the 2nd of January against Huddersfield. The fact that the break of the game was postponed, meant it's been 17 days, for the majority of those players. Very few of them played in the FA Cup. So, it looked like a team that hadn't played that much, didn't have that much match fitness, and I thought it was probably against the run of play that we took the lead. I'd imagine Marc Robins might have been quite upset with that, because I thought Coventry, started pretty well. They looked a little bit sceptical themselves defensively, but going forward, they were a real threat. There's not an awful lot of goals in that Coventry team. It's, I think we probably saw tonight, why they are perhaps not as high as they might want to be, because they are creating chances, but they've not sort of got that quality going forward. I mean, I know they brought in Victor Gyökeres from Brighton on loan, and he got his first start for them tonight. But they've done very well to get where they are in the table, but you can see why they're not quite as high as perhaps some other teams are, because they haven't got that quality to put the ball in the back of the net. And then in contrast, Reading showed why they are now third in the table, because Lucas Shaw just needs that one chance. We know the quality he has, and we've seen him score goals like that all season long, where he uses his strength, uses skill on the ball to put the ball in the back of the net. And that's the difference between the sides, sort of struggling bottom half of the table, and a side like Reading, who are third now. It is that quality going forward, and Reading had that with great ball from John Swift and a great finish from Lucas Shaw.
Yeah, I would agree on Coventry that they're actually a pretty decent team. Certainly in the kind of, either third, they're not going to give you loads of chances. Certainly in attack, they always feel like they're quite dangerous. But yeah, you're right, it's about getting the ball over the line. It's so difficult, and that's kind of as Reading are proving at the moment. It was almost 2 in the end of the first half. Michael Olly had a scuffed effort. Oviajaz set it the post. Lucas Shaw had an effort saved, and then a far post, almost a tap in. You could kind of argue, but he put it wide. Towards the end of the first half, and Reading actually had 7 shots in the first half, which was as many as Coventry had in the entire game. They had 3 shots on target in the first half. That's more than Coventry had in the entire game. So certainly shows their dominance in that sense. And 30 seconds into the second half, I think it's probably the perfect time to score. It's better, in my opinion, than scoring just before the half-time break, because players, they have some sort of ability to react or to be turned around by their manager if they've just conceded before half-time. But if you've had all of your half-time preparations and then you immediately concede, I think that's much more difficult for a team to bounce back from. So Andy Rinomhota popping up from Lucas Shaw's ball in, a left-footed finish from the D through a massive old crowd. And I think that was his 100th appearance or something, they said, Olly, and a really good moment for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially, as you said, it's the perfect time to score, especially when you're 1-0 up. Because I'm sure Coventry would have gone into the half-time break, so say not out of the game by any means, and had their own chances, and might have felt as if they'd be able to get back into the game second half. So for Reading to go and get that goal early doors second half was the perfect timing. And I think if that goal hadn't have come, then things start to get perhaps a bit nervy. The longer it goes on without scoring and making it 2-0, 1-0. The saying goes that 2-0 is a very dangerous scoreline, but I'd argue that 1-0 is even more dangerous, because Coventry have got an easy route back into the game at that point when it's still 1-0, and to go 2-0 up so soon after the break, and always nice for an academy graduate to score. And sort of Rinomhota's gone a bit under the radar this season, but he's not really put a foot wrong for me. I think others might have sort of caught the limelight, especially Josh Laurent next to him, but Rinomhota has continued to sort of be that solid base at the midfield, especially sort of with Josh Laurent having more license to sort of drive forward a bit more. Rinomhota's been, that solid player in front of the back four, and from the great partnership with Josh Laurent. And it probably says a lot of sort of what we've come to expect of Rinomhota, just to go out and do his job. That he's not really put a foot wrong, but he's maybe not got the credit that he deserves so far this season. But to get a goal is obviously a great moment for him on his 100th appearance, which is, as I say, is great for someone to have come through the academy. Obviously not a local lad, but he's been with the club for since he was sort of 17, 18, and for him to clock up 100 appearances now is obviously great for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was also a good moment for Lucas Shaw, as I say, getting the assist. That's his 5th assist of the season to go on top of 17 goals. All of his assists actually have come in games where he's also scored. So you can tell just Lucas Shaw. I think there's only one league game where he scored more than one goal, and that was the Huddersfield game. So he really spreads his goals delightfully. I'd say that's probably one thing that George Puskas kind of doesn't do. He scores, a brace here, or he's got a hat trick before, hasn't he? Whereas Lucas Shaw really does kind of notch one, and that's kind of his game. And in terms of these points, they were basically secured when Carl McFadden was sent off after 70 minutes. Only moments later, John Swift made it third with an absolutely stunning free kick. But I don't think there were any real worries about John Swift when he came back from injury, Ollie, in terms of how he was going to perform or anything. We all kind of knew that he was going to be very solid and hopefully at the level that he was last season, where I think he was one of our best players. And to have him, slot in so quickly and so seamlessly is absolutely huge.
Yeah, massive. I mean, I think we were all perhaps a bit worried when he got injured. I think it was the second or third game of the season, but I think really Reading didn't really miss him. Obviously, the table shows that they went on that fantastic run at the start of the season without John Swift, and stayed sort of 4th, 5th in the table until he came back. And there were perhaps question marks of whether he'd be able to actually get into that side. Certainly with the form of Michael Olly sort of taking that number 10 spot. But yeah, it was just a reminder tonight of his sensational quality. I said it earlier, but that ball over the top to set up Lucas Shaw. We've seen him play that sort of pass time and time again. It's pinpoint. It's such good quality. And yeah, that free kick is you watch it go in, and the keeper's got absolutely no chance. We know how good John Swift is from dead ball situations, but that's 30, 35 yards out, and he's put such power on it and such accuracy. As I say, the keeper's got absolutely no chance, and from that point, the game is won. I think the game was probably won at 2-0. To be honest, you could see Coventry's heads drop, and certainly those 2 tackles from Carl McFadden struck of a man who knew he was beaten. He had an absolutely torrid evening. Michael Olly, Ajaria, Lucas Shaw, just constantly just drew fouls from him because he couldn't handle it. He had a horrible evening, and you could see the look on his face when he got that second yellow card to get the red card. Is he knew that he'd been run ragged, and that's always a great sign that Reading sort of put in that professional performance. They could have sort of stopped it at 2-0, but they kept on going, trying to get that third, trying to get the fourth, and it was a very, very professional, clinical performance, and that's the sign of teams that want to get promotion. So yeah, especially after losing 3-2 to Coventry early in the season, it was fantastic to get such a convincing win this time around.
Yeah, straight after that Swift goal, Swift's actually taken off, and Rinamos and Ajaria were arrested shortly afterwards. Saw a brief glimpse of Dejan Tetek, the young Anglo-Serbian midfielder who is coming through the academy at the moment. And really, I mean, the last thing to talk about in terms of the recap is, I mean, we got Watford playing at the moment against Barnsley at home, so potentially they'll be getting 3 points in that, which I think will take them back above Reading and put Reading into 4th. That would mean that we'd be playing well, obviously there were lots of games in hand. Brentford at the moment, 2 points behind us, 2 games in hand. Bournemouth, we actually have a game in hand on, and then Middlesbrough have a game in hand. They're currently in 7th, and what are they, 7 points behind us? Yeah, so really, in terms of who we might be playing in the playoffs, for argument's sake, Ollie, let's say that it'd be Bournemouth. Would we fancy ourselves going into something like that? I suppose really looking at the top 6 right now, Norwich, you could probably say are going to be decent, or at least continue to be decent. Brentford, I think they've not lost in months, and potentially my pick for that second place at the moment. And then you've got Swansea, Bournemouth and Watford are the other teams in the top 6 at the moment. I think any of those Reading would fancy themselves on. And to be honest, I think any of those games as a playoff tie would be a bit of a coin toss.
Yeah, I think it's very, very evenly matched in that top 6 at the moment. I agree. I think Norwich and Brentford might probably not run away with it, but will almost quite comfortably take those top two spots. But sort of below them, it's sort of a gaggle of teams, Reading included, who are almost quite inconsistent. You would have thought that Bournemouth would have got a win over Derby tonight, but they lost that one. That was their second defeat in a row after losing to Luton at the weekend. Again, that's another game you would have thought that they would have won. And you look at Watford, who are inconsistent. Can't really seem to string sort of two wins together. Swansea seem fairly solid, but have got a defeat in them. They themselves lost to Derby only a few weeks ago. So that there are teams sort of below that. Obviously, Brentford are fifth at the moment, but have got games in hand that one of which is against Reading. But as I say, I'd expect Norwich and Brentford to be that top two. But below them, it's great to be talking about Reading in amongst those group of teams, because come the start of the season, Bournemouth, Watford, Swansea, you might have said would have been up there anyway. But to say that Reading now have very much put themselves in that mix is great. And obviously, the next few weeks are key. We're continuing with this revenge month theme that Veljko Paunovic and Tom McIntyre have talked about, that Reading's sort of next few games now are against teams who they lost to in the first half of the season. And obviously that includes Bournemouth and Brentford and Stoke as well, sort of who've made a few good signings this month and sort of seem to be, putting themselves in that playoff picture. And obviously Preston at the weekend as well. So yeah, this next month is big for Reading, because not only are they games against sides that they lost to in the first half of the season, of course Coventry included in that as well, but they are games against teams who are in and around them and sort of wanting to take points off them and try and get as high as they can. So it's a big month coming up, but on the basis of tonight, obviously Coventry are a weaker side than sort of the Brentford or Bournemouth, but they've given themselves the foundation now to go on and hopefully kick on and get a few more good results.
Definitely. Well, if you have any thoughts on Reading's next few games and everything, the Tilehurst End Podcast will continue as always, and you can get your thoughts into the mailbag. The tilehurstend@gmail.com is our email, and also the Facebook and Twitter. And with a bit of instant reaction, let's go into the mailbag then and see what you guys are asking us this week.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you R's!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
Okay, Sean Burgess kicks us off by asking, is Veljko Paunovic the best looking manager we've ever had? The answer is Nigel Adkins. Sorry, Sean. Olly, I don't know if you have any advances on that.
I always thought Jose Gomes was quite good looking. He was almost a Portuguese George Clooney, I think a lot of people called him. But yeah, I'd agree with Adkins and his tan. It might have been perhaps a bit over the top sometimes, but yeah, but between Adkins and Jose Gomes for me. But Pano is also a very it's a great interview with him on Football Focus at the weekend, and he was dressed very dapper indeed for that. So he's certainly up there.
Yeah, he's certainly in around the mix. Gomez is a good shout. Definitely, and I'm just a sucker for the Scouse tan of Nigel Adkins. That's certainly where it goes for me. Cole Murphy asking if a red card appears in a forest but there's nobody there to see it, does it exist? And he says, for real, who should take free kicks, Swift or Elise? I think basically there were two moments that kind of argued as to why it's Swift. For me, obviously his goal, but also Elise when he had his effort in the D that he'd won moments earlier, and it really was a rugby conversion. Perhaps wasn't perhaps was the shoulder injury which he kind of came off with moments later. But yeah, I think that probably settles it for me. BM asking why was Tom Kerridge commentating on Sky? I don't actually know who the pundit was or the commentator was this week, but we were the second choice championship game on tonight, so we weren't going to get the A team, as it were. Luke Redmond asking if we paid Sam Baldock minimum wage for the time he spends on the pitch, would it be a waste of money? Sam Igo, probably no relation, saying how is Sam Baldock a professional footballer? And I think there was another Baldock question. Ross Webber saying, would you sell Baldock this window if one of those two transfers were allowed as a target man, someone more like Zhao, to come in as a replacement? Sam Baldock, discuss Ollie. He's came off the bench. I must admit my head was turned as he missed a chance tonight, but really continues to do kind of what you expect Sam Baldock to do, but not any more than that.
I mean, he should have scored that chance. I'll be honest. Yeah, I mean, there's not an awful lot more you can say without sort of beginning to sort of crucify the bloke. But yeah, he should have scored 1-on-1. Look, he obviously he works hard, and I think Panovic does like him. He's trusted him, and he was his only option really going up front before Christmas. Gave him the captain's armband against Luton, and he's brought him on in a fair few games. So he clearly trusts him, and I think he is a hard worker. But in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net, it's just not going for him at the moment. And I think it's once that sort of shot doesn't go in, his confidence is going to dip. And I think he just needs sort of one to go in for him. As I say, I quite like him as a bloke, but as a player, yeah, he's not going to be sort of that man if Lucas João gets injured again, and obviously George Puskas is out for a while now as well. You wouldn't feel particularly confident in Sam Baldock being up front. I think there was a question on whether we should be playing him Melvin Lambert, and obviously that's a fair point as well. So yeah, I think it might get to a point in the next few games if Baldock isn't, because you might come to a time where Panovic needs to throw someone on to try and get a goal, and if Baldock's low on confidence in that regard, do you try and throw on Melvin Lambert? Obviously missed a pretty big chance for his own last weekend against Luton, so it's sort of a toss up between those two at the moment in terms of who comes on, because as I said, George Puskas is injured, and you can't always rely on Lucas João to stay fit. So Reading almost do need that sort of second choice striker at the moment. It's Sam Baldock, but yeah, not really going his way at the moment.
Yeah, well, I suppose the one player we haven't mentioned is Yaku Mate, who, with those three midfielders of Lisa, Jaria, Swift, would in theory, or certainly in practice, even be a good alternative to Lucas João as a striker. And Ben, as you said on the Twitter question, saying Paunovic continues to impress and has been near perfect, but one flaw for me is he continues to pick Baldock as his sub, especially when we're cruising. It's a waste. And Melvin Lambert could get valuable minutes. I think probably the logic in putting Baldock on when we're cruising is that if he scores the chance he gets tonight, then that can take him off and he can be a really useful substitute for us and be, a good player as a result. But, maybe that's the logic that isn't coming to fruition at the moment. But I certainly didn't know it was the case for having put Melvin Lambert on tonight. Peter Griffiths asking, why would Richards want to downgrade from this? Is Elise going to be Reading's first £100 million player? And is 106 under pressure? 106, I think, mathematically speaking, we're out for this year, but 106 will probably be under pressure if we lose in the playoffs and are still in the division next year. David McCormack, then last question, that's saying, Tom McIntyre or more discuss? And I think Tom McIntyre has quite quietly been going about a really steady job of being in the team recently. Tom Holmes had a bit of a difficult game tonight. That kind of, you do get that from young defenders, and Paunovic wisely took him off. But McIntyre was very decent. I found in that chance that I mentioned after about 10 minutes when Holmes gave the ball away, you could maybe say that McIntyre should make more of an attempt to block the shot that comes in. And you can argue, it's kind of luck that because he stays on his feet, he can then clear the rebound. But it's the fact that because he stays on his feet, he can then clear the rebound. So, I'm very happy with McIntyre at the moment, Ollie. In terms of Liam Moore coming back, I suppose perhaps it will be more of an issue when it comes to the sort of Brentford and Bournemouth games that we do really want him back for those ones.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I agree. I think McIntyre's been very good the last few weeks. Obviously, he's got the bonus of being a left-footed centre-back, so sort of he enables Reading to play out from the back in that sense. And obviously, he got the assist for Lucas João's first goal against Huddersfield a few weeks ago. So he definitely adds something to this Reading team that perhaps Liam Moore doesn't. I probably would, if both were fit, I probably would just about go for Liam Moore, because he's been excellent this season, to be fair, with before his injury. And there are probably a few question marks in the summer after he didn't end last season on the best of form and sort of ended the campaign out of the team. But I think he's come back in this year and done really, really well. Obviously it's great that Tom McIntyre's been given his chance because he certainly deserves it and he's played very well. But for me, I think Liam Moore is the better defender, which you would expect. He's been playing the game for several more years and is the far more experienced option. But certainly Tom McIntyre is one to continue to keep an eye on. Obviously his contract's up in the summer, but certainly for me worth renewing. Michael Morrison's only got a couple more years left in him, I'd imagine, at this level. So Tom McIntyre is still certainly one to keep hold of, and is by no means a bad backup for Morrison and Moore, as he's proven the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, it's interesting with McIntyre. Actually, funny enough, this week I started my Football Manager 21 game with Reading, and it said that Reading have, on his contract thing, it said that Reading have an option on Tom McIntyre to extend it for a year, which I was like, oh, that's interesting if Reading have an option on it. But then the game also said that we have an option on Omar Richards. And I thought that's probably would have come up by now if that's true. So it's interesting with the contract situation. I think really, with all of the players, it is really a case, particularly you've got to remember the pandemic side of things and the financial aspect of that. So it really is just a case of waiting to see what division Reading are in, basically, and how everything's settled out in the summer, because it hopefully at least will be a very drastically different situation to what we're in now. Let's talk. I mean, there's not really many transfers to talk about. Let's kind of update you on how things are going in the transfer world and with the other Reading FC teams with Newsbites.
Keep up to date with all things Reading FC. Follow the Tilehurst End on Facebook and Twitter.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by ZCZ Films. Remember, if you want to get involved in sponsoring the show, drop us an email to thetilehurstend@gmail.com.
Okay, I'm just going to whiz through this because there isn't really too much information now as we get to the 19th of January, so we've still got almost a fortnight to go of the transfer window. Michael at least won the EFL Young Player of the Month award last year, so big congratulations to him. Obviously, it meant a slew of, this player's going to be playing in the Premier League articles soon. He said that he wants to win promotion, maybe even win the league with Reading this year, but for next season or for the summer onwards, it certainly would be a question mark that Reading can hopefully answer themselves. Swindon midfielder Scott Twine has been linked, but kind of like an kind of link, nothing too major. In terms of the other football teams, under 23 is not in action until Friday. The under 18s also not in action until later this week. That's on Saturday. They host West Brom. Women's team, however, got a really good 1-1 draw with Arsenal last time out. That's after the Chelsea loss. They go to Aston Villa now on Saturday. They're 6th, but with the, kind of mess around with the fixtures and everything, they've actually played more than anyone else in the league. So can't read too much into that at the moment. But of course, plenty of games coming up. Let's jump now into big match preview and round off the show with a talk about Reading's trip to Preston.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you Rs!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
So, Olly, it's kind of hard to know what to say about Preston in this because they're playing tomorrow after we've recorded. They're on 3 defeats in a row going into that game, but they're on 3 wins in a row previously. They've drawn twice all championship season, which is the lowest in the league. It seems like they're kind of, on the surface at least, they're kind of an all or nothing team. They've won 10 games, which is only one less than Brentford, but they've lost 12, which is more or the same number as Rotherham. So really, it's hard to know whether we're going to, if we get the bad Preston, I suppose we'll win, but if we get the good Preston, it might be quite difficult.
Yeah, and we obviously got the good Preston. They're good, bad for us. Back in November when they won 3-0. But yeah, it's sort of seemed to be much the same for Preston the last couple of years. They are capable of sort of turning on a very, very good performance. And they've certainly got some good players in their side. The likes of Scott Sinclair, Daniel Johnson, who scored against Reading, I think, in November, is also a good player. And yeah, I think it's a game you would expect or you would want Reading to win. If Reading are to be in that top 6 come the end of the season, a mid-table side are the sort of team you want to be beating. I think part of Preston's inconsistent problem is that they aren't great at home. I think that they're very good away, as proven in their 3-0 win in Berkshire early in the season. They've only won 4. I think just looking at it, they won 4 of 12 at home this season. Obviously, but 3 of those have come in their last 4 home games. So yeah, very, very hard to predict, but that they are, it's this continuation of this revenge month that Panovich is talking about, that, Reading want to get their own back on teams that beat them early in the campaign. And, I see no reason now on the back of tonight's win that they can't do that against Preston on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the teams that are around Millwall, Huddersfield, or around Preston, sorry. Huddersfield were beat, Cardiff were beat. Millwall, it was a draw in the end. Birmingham, obviously, we haven't gone away to them yet. Blackburn, that we've gone to and that we've beaten. There's certainly some, there's good precedent there for thinking that Reading can go and get this win. And it certainly seems that I think Elise picked up a bit of a shoulder injury, but there's no other reason to believe that we might be kind of depleted going into the game. I don't think there's any sense that any other players going to be returning, certainly not to the lineup. So, yeah, I think it's a difficult one to call, really. It's that classic championship game, isn't it? That you can get yourself lulled into this false sense of security that Reading are going to, continue to win and win and win and want to the playoffs or to an automatic promotion place. In reality, we have lost 7 games this season, so there is quite a decent chance we go and Preston have it on and we have it off, and that's how it is. I suppose that's just the nature of the championship. But really, I think Reading have to go there in a lot of confidence. At the end of the day, they've won 3 of their last 4 in the league. The draw of that was away to Swansea, who are a very good team. So yeah, I'm relatively confident going to it. Kickoff's at 12:30 on Sky Sports on Sunday, January 24th. So set your watches for that one. It's a game that's only really taking place because both teams were knocked out with the FA Cup. So it's an FA Cup weekend with a championship game on as well. So in terms of predictions then, Ollie, what are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, just on that, I think it's good that Reading do have a game this weekend because there'll be a lot of teams. I think Bournemouth won their FA Cup tie. I think Norwich did. Brentford are playing Leicester. So there's a lot of teams around Reading that won't have games this weekend. And I think for me, it's always good to have those points on the board. And Reading, with a win they can't go to second, but they certainly extend their lead in third if they were able to get the win. So
yeah, we can with a 7-0 win.
Well, yeah, wow, that's true. It was I think it was 7 years ago, a couple of days ago, we beat Bolton 7-1. So yeah, who knows? I
History can repeat itself.
Well, yeah, I hope so. I think it's certainly good that our game is on this weekend, especially after missing out last weekend. But prediction-wise, as I say, I think we should go there and win. Perhaps it might not be as comfortable as it was tonight, and again, it might well depend, and my opinion may well change based off how Preston get on tomorrow night. But I am going to go for a 2-1 Reading win.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 1-0 Reading myself. Preston aren't a huge scoring team, just kind of checking the table. No, not too bad. But yeah, I think a 1-0 win is what I'm going to go for with that. In terms of, as you say, the fact that we are playing on the weekend, in terms of helping us going forward, it doesn't really make too much of a difference because Bournemouth are playing on the weekend as well. Neither us or Bournemouth are playing in the midweek after that before we then meet on Friday night on the 29th. So I guess it certainly helps us that we're playing, but Bournemouth also, they're keeping to the same schedule. So no huge advantage in that sense. But yeah, this is going to be a really interesting game. And as I say, on the TV again, Reading been absolutely blessed this year in terms of being on the TV. I don't know if the club thought, but I suppose the club probably make more money out of us being on Sky than on more people watching us on iFollow. So I suppose they're probably doing not too bad as well. But it's actually been a real treat during this time when we can't go to games to have so many of our games on TV. So that will continue on a Sunday. We'll be back after that game to discuss in our usual manner what Reading have been up to. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Ollie, tonight to join you for the talking of a 3-0 win.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much.
and Reading have knocked up the table once more into that top 3 position, although in reality probably top 4 by the time you're listening to this. But as I say, Reading 3-0 win against Coventry tonight. The midfield 3 are back together. Rinamotta popping up with a goal, Lucas Schau doing a business, John Swift with the spectacular strike, Veljko Paunovic absolutely nailing it after a few days off for the Royals. What more could you possibly want? Well, let's go and get another 3 points on Sunday. Until then, come on you R's.
You smile, funny how the clouds always leave a trail.